Shavua Tov and welcome to everyone. Welcome to this beautiful and amazing birthday celebration. Everyone's clapping. Do you know whose birthday it is? Obviously, we all know the Mishnah, the first Mishnah in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, which states that Tu B'Shvat, the 15th day of the month of Shvat, is the new year of the trees. With that being said, that's not the only birthday that we're going to be commemorating this evening. On Tu B'Shvat Tafshin Tet, February 14th, 1949, the first sitting of the Constituent Assembly took place at the Jewish Agency in Jerusalem. It was on this historic day, a mere 63 years ago, where the Israeli Parliament, or Knesset, was born. Most representatives arrived to Jerusalem from the coastal area, stopping on their way for a monumental tree planting ceremony. The ritual of planting trees in Jerusalem and its surroundings have since become an integral part of the Knesset's birthday celebration. It is my honor and pleasure to invite the Mara Da'atra, Rabbi Daniel Korelkin, to say a few words.
Shavua Tov, everyone. Thank you, Yehudi. A number of commentaries discuss the holiday of Tu B'Shvat, which we are celebrating this evening, as well as the birthday of the Knesset. The question, of course, is what is the cause of celebration? It happens to be a very technical day, mentioned in the Mishnah, having to do with the laws of tithing. It's a very arcane, very technical law, which shouldn't really manifest itself in any way, and yet, halachically, we don't say tachanun on Tu B'Shvat, so there is some aspect of festiveness that exists on Tu B'Shvat. And so many of the Meforshim, especially those who emphasize Torah Chasidut, discuss a lot about the significance of Tu B'Shvat. The Shem Yishmuel says that it takes a third of a year for the rainfall to penetrate into a tree and to really work its way through the root system, the trunk, the branches, the leaves, and to actually create the budding of the first fruits that one can see on the tree. And if that's the case, we know that Ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh, the Torah says that human beings are very much like a tree, in that our feet are firmly planted in this world, are rooted to this world, and yet we try to reach up to heaven, and that represents the body of the human being which stands tall and erect. And we try to produce perot, which represent our connection with heaven. We try to produce mitzvot. And that's really the significance of connecting the human being to a tree. Exactly 1/3 of a year ago was the high holiday season. According to BAYT Shammai, the spiritual rainfall that came down upon the Jewish people, upon you and me, took place on Rosh Hashanah. And therefore, exactly 1/3 of a year later is the first of Shabbat. And therefore, according to BAYT Shammai, who understand that God works his way in this world through din, through the strict attribute of justice, all is decided on Rosh Hashanah. And therefore, BAYT Shammai celebrates Tu B'Shvat, the third of a year later, when the human being has had all of his spiritual waters beginning to manifest themselves on the first of Shabbat. BAYT Hillel, however, understands that you have to go through not only Rosh Hashanah, you have to go through a Yom Kippur, and you have to go through the ensuing days until you get to the first day of Sukkot, which is in Kabbalah known as Chesed Shebechesed, a day of great benevolence and kindness of Hashem, who shows His ultimate mercy to those even when we're undeserving. And therefore, a third of a year later after Sukkot is Tu B'Shvat. And therefore it's brought down in Torah Chasidut and Hasidic thought that even though a person may not have felt a significant change in his life over the first third of the year after Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, nevertheless, this is the time when perhaps the budding of our spiritual fruit can start to be detected. And perhaps that's really why it's not a coincidence why the Knesset formed in the year 5709, 1949, on Tu B'Shvat. I want to read for you a fascinating letter, a piece of Jewish history, a piece of Israeli history, that was originally written in Hebrew, and I've translated most of it into English. It's a very important public letter that was published in anticipation of the opening session of the Knesset that would take place on February 14th, 1949. This letter was published on the 20th of Tevet, 5709, January 21st, 1949. It is, the top of the letter reads, Da'at Torah. This is Das Torah. This is the way that people are supposed to think if they subscribe to Torah. The word of the rabbis of Israel to Hashem's nation in Zion. And it says, Nodel Hashem al shezichinu birov rachamav v'chasadav, that we give praise to Hashem, who has given us the privilege in His great mercy and kindness, lirot et hanitzanim harishonim, to see the very first buds, shel ha'atchalta digeula, the beginning of the redemption, im hakamata shel medinat Yisrael, through the establishment of the state of Israel. And then it continues, I'll read the rest in English. Hashem has shown us that now is the time of His desire. This obligates us to come to Hashem's aid with mighty people, so that our land and our state will be built and established with holy purity. The Torah of Israel and its laws, which were given to us at Sinai, have served us throughout our diaspora. Those self-same laws will serve us to establish and maintain our state. It is therefore our duty to guard the Torah with added vigilance throughout our lives here in the Holy Land. The United Religious Coalition, it's a new organization called Hachazit Hadatit HaMeuchedet, which, as you might detect, no longer exists. But back then it was known as the United Religious Coalition, that was established through the religious parties, is a positive time-bound mitzvah, a mitzvah saseh shehazman ramah. All of B'nai Yisrael who believe in God's Torah and walk in its ways are obligated to unite and rally in and around it. We must do this so that we may influence the upcoming founding meeting of the Knesset, which will determine our future way of life with the spirit of Torah. We must stress upon it the light of Torah and holiness, and eradicate from our land the darkness and confusion of foreign doctrines that have crept into our land. This coalition, if it is successfully broad-based and well-represented, will serve as a guarantee at the founding meeting that we will succeed in preserving the public character of the State of Israel as being illuminated by the light of the Torah. Only with broad support, which will translate into more delegates, will we have the guarantee that Shabbat, Kashrut, and marital life in Israel will be governed by the spirit of the Torah. Only through our support of this coalition will there be assurance that society, the law, and the state, both between man and his God, as well as between man and his fellow man, his nation and his land, will be based on justice, truth, righteousness, and uprightness that exists in the Torah of Israel and which ensures peace over Israel. We therefore turn to all who believe in the word of Hashem and His Torah. Let there not be among us any dissenters or separatists, nor any critics or bystanders. Let there not be among us any who lend support to dissenters or separatists. Let us all work together so that every person in Israel will support the United Religious Coalition. And it goes on, and just to conclude it, through our efforts, we will merit the resting of the divine presence in the state of Israel and the coming of the Mashiach speedily in our days. Give strength to the United Religious Coalition, and the hand of God will be exalted. And it is signed Chief Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Halevi Herzog and Chief Rabbi Ben Zion Meir Chai Uziel. Again, this was written by, the letter was written by the two chief rabbis. By the way, if you want a copy of this letter, you can contact me, I'll send you a copy. It's in Menachem Kasher's book, HaTkufa HaGedolah. I'm sure it's published in a number of other Sfarim as well. But not only was this letter authored by the two chief rabbis, but it was signed by 200 rabbis in cities throughout Israel. Some names of note on the list which may surprise you. Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, Rabbi Yaakov Moshe Charlap, Rabbi Yecheskel Sarna, Rabbi Eliyahu Ram, Rabbi Yechiel Schlesinger, and Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, all of blessed memory. The reason why these names are noteworthy is because some of them represent the Mizrahi movement, but also some of them also represent the Aguda movement. Apparently back then, no one had a problem acknowledging that the founding of the State of Israel represented the first buds of the beginning of the redemption. It was more important not to squabble over words and over ideologies because everyone knew what was at stake. Today, life is a little bit more complicated, and it's unfortunate that we see some of the fissures that have formed within religious Israeli society. But perhaps on this Tu B'Shvat, we can look forward and say to ourselves that maybe we can look back at the days of the founding of the Knesset and see what was accomplished by religious Jews in Israel because of their commitment to Achdut and to the realization that only united will we be able to accomplish our goals of founding a state that is based on the Torah and its principles. And if we look backwards, perhaps we can have a brighter future. Anyway, Yishar Koach to our wonderful Shalom who have made this evening for us. We thank you very much, and Shavua Tov. I'd like to invite up Boaz at this time. We'll do a little bit of Shirah or Malava Malka, and hopefully you'll be able to join us.
I would like to call up Rabbi Daniel Eliav, a shaliach at Tenenbaum Chat Kimmel campus, to grace us with perhaps a deeper meaning behind growth and blossoming.
שבוע טוב, ברשות המודerator. I haven't got such a good English like the ones who spoke before me, but I'll try to do my best. As we heard before, Tu B'Shvat is not only the birthday of the trees, but it's also the birthday of the Knesset. In the last generations, the issue of planting and the connection to the nature took a stronger in part on Tu B'Shvat. But what is the connection to the Knesset? What is Knesset? What is the source of the word Knesset? Knesset in Hebrew is gathering, kinus, like we've got BAYT, Knesset. Knesset is also the house of gathering. But when was it mentioned the first time using this word Knesset for gathering? In the second, what we call Geulah, Shivat Zion, in the time of Ezra, Ezra, the scribe, the sofer, founded an institute which was called Knesset HaGdolah, the Great Assembly. And that was like the symbol of the autonomy of this renewing situation of Am Yisrael, which was coming back to Eretz Yisrael. Now, when all the prophets, Yechezkel, Yirmiyahu, and Zechariah, and even in Tehillim, when they had the vision of going back from Babel to Eretz Yisrael, this vision, they made it through the metaphor of a plant, something which is growing. And I'll read some psukim which are mentioned. In Yechezkel it says, Bayom hahu atzmiach keren leBeit Yisrael, I'll translate it. On that day, I will cause the horn of the house of David to blossom out like a plant. Yirmiyahu says, Inei yamim ba'im neum Hashem hakimoti leDavid tzemach tzadik. Behold, days are coming, says the Lord, when I'll set up of David the righteous shoot. Okay. And we, usually in our prayers, we are following these words. Every day, 3 times a day, we are using this metaphor of the plant which is growing in Tfilat Shmona Esrei, Tfilat Amidah. We are saying, Et tzemach David avdecha mehera tatzmiach. Et tzemach is a plant. Let it grow and do it fast. I'll remind you that maybe the words in the English. And it says like this: May the offshoot of your servant David soon flower, or speedily cause it to flourish. And Baruch Atah Hashem cause the pride of salvation to flourish. So as we see redemption, Geulah is being compared to a tree, to a plant which grows. The question is, why is it like this? Because when we are speaking about redemption, like we even read this Shabbat, Yetziat Mitzrayim, we don't find this metaphor of using the plant as a metaphor for redemption, for Geulah. What is so special about, let's say, the second, the third redemption that we are hoping that will be, that is being compared to a plant, something we didn't see in Egypt when we came out? I think in our parasha, we are reading about Kriyat Yam Suf. In the parashot before, we also saw a lot of miracles. We know that the redemption from Egypt was beyond nature. We had miracles. There was a lot of, like jumping from stage to stage, from slave to people who are free people. In the last redemption, it's going to be different. It's like a plant. It's connected to the nature. We are not only redeeming Am Yisrael. It's the redemption of all the world, all the creation, and also, of course, Am Yisrael in it. And part of, of redeeming the world is also redeeming the political culture, political institute, like the parliament. It also has to be redeemed. That's why there's a good reason for mentioning in Tu B'Shvat, which is also connected to the nature, also the birthday also of the Knesset, which, as we say in the Tefillah L'Shalom HaMedina, Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu. It's also growing. We know we need patience. It's like a plant. It grows step by step. Sometimes they're difficult. Sometimes there are storms outside, but it's growing. And let's just repeat what we are saying. Et tzemach David avdecha. We are adding one word, mehera. Please, quick. We want it to be much more faster. Like we say, I'll repeat it in the English translation of this, in Tfilat Amidah, this blessing. May the offshoot of your servant David soon flower, and we pray, let it grow good and fast.
Thank you, Rabbi Eliav. A Malavet Malka, or a meal on Motzei Shabbat, is commonly referred to as the meal of David HaMelech. David HaMelech is well known for multiple reasons, one of which is his musical talent, specifically with his kino, his violin. The Gemara in Masechet Brachot states that David HaMelech had a violin hung over his bed, and in the middle of the night, a northern wind would enter through his window and play beautiful sounds. Upon hearing this, David would arise and would begin praising Hashem until the break of dawn. It is with pleasure that I call upon Mrs. Penina Weintraub, a Shlicha of Torah Metzion, to perform a musical piece. Thank you very much, Mrs. Weintraub. That was beautiful and very moving. Julia Morgan, an American architect at the turn of the 20th century, once said, "Architecture is a visual art, and the buildings speak for themselves." With that in mind, we would like to invite Mrs. Efrat Abergel, Shlicha at the Tenenbaum Chat Wallenberg campus, who only after 5 months here in Toronto will elaborate to us in English on the Knesset's architectural and beautiful design.
At the beginning of Zionism, it was clear to the visionary of the state that upon its establishment, it will be a democracy run by a parliament. In his book titled Alten Olen, Benjamin Zev Herzl described what he envisioned as the parliament of the Jewish state in Jerusalem. The masses will vote on the monumental building with the majestic electoral hall, spacious and tall, with marble floors. Natural light will shine through its beautiful glass ceiling. To compete for the rights of designing the permanent home of the Knesset. After about a year, the architect Yosef Klavin was crowned the winner. The judges explained that Klavin's building well expressed and serves its spatial designation by positioning it on a level the dimensions of which are not exaggerated, and by means of the noble appearance of the body of the building on all sides as well. A well-designed building, yet far from the original plan proposed by Claudia. In December 1963, the architect Dora Gad was invited to help with the interior design of the Knesset. Gad aspired to designate to this rich structure and its vast and monumental spaces a human dimension, to have few decorations, adorned floors and wall spaces, and a limited variety of colors. The Plenum. In the Plenum Hall, there are 120 seats for the Knesset members, arranged in a shape of a 10-branched menorah. At the podium sits the Speaker of the Knesset, along with those who address the plenum. There are 2 additional balconies, the lower for VIPs and the press, while the upper is open to the public. One impressive artistic aspect of the plenum hall is the front wall behind the speaker's podium. The wall, designed by Danny Caravan, encompasses the connection between the Jerusalem of the heavens with the Jerusalem of the earth. Marc Chagall was asked to design the hall, and he specifically chose wall carpets over a mural. The carpets themes were the first one, Chazon Yeshayahu, Chazon Acharit Elim, the second one, Yetziat Mitzrayim, and the last one, the Knisa Yerushalayim, the government room. The room's dimensions are relatively small, and it is commonly used for meetings with VIPs. The interior was designed by Dora Gad. Most of the room is taken up by the large conference table with a leather-bound writing block at each seat. The light fixtures hang from the white ceiling above the table. The floor is covered with blue carpeting, and the walls are covered with light oak wood. A large oil painting by Rubin hang on the wall facing the entrance to the hall. Before I close, I must mention the large menorah which stands at the entrance to the Knesset. The 7-branched menorah, which stands at the edge of the Rose Garden, is the work of art of the Jewish-British artist Benot Elkan. The bronze menorah resembles that of the one from the temple, which stood as a monumental symbol of Judaism for generations. It stands 4.3 meters tall, 3.5 meters wide, and weighs 4 tons. The theme of the menorah is the spiritual struggle of the Jewish nation. That bears upon it the pasuk from Zechariah, לא בחי ולא בכוח כי אם ברוחי אמר השם צבאות. Not by might, not by power, but my spirit, say the Lord. The long process of planning and building the Knesset lasted over 10 years. One cannot credit one specific architect with the final product. Nobody knows I'm going to say it, but I think I want to say it. Usually I used to celebrate Tu B'Shvat with my family in Israel. And all my family and my husband's family, and I'm talking about parents, brothers, sisters, all the grandchildren, everybody, friends, everybody is invited to our home to celebrate Tu B'Shvat. Why? Because Tu B'Shvat for us is not just a celebration of the birth of the trees, but also celebration of my birthday. Since I'm here and my family is in Israel and it's still Tu B'Shvat, I'll consider it like my birthday, and I want to thank you for coming.
our evening's focus on the Knesset, we turn to the Knesset in Israel for a message on behalf of the state to present before you two short video clips. Quick translation for those who didn't understand working here. Both Mr. Steinitz and Mr. Yalon were both obviously congratulating and thanking the Jewish community here in Toronto for their continued support of Israel and for the fact that we are all sitting here tonight and celebrating such a wonderful Chag of Tu B'Shvat and honoring the Knesset of Israel. So this evening, we decided that we test your knowledge of Israeli law. That's right. I'd like to call upon Rabbi Hillel Movitz, Shliach of the Torah Mitzion Kollel here in Toronto, to put you to the test.
Now we're going into the second stage. Each one on the table has this sign. Some have yellow, some have red. Hope you don't have any issues with the color you were given. One side says Nachon. I'll translate because not everyone knows. Nachon means yes, true. The other side says Lo Nachon, meaning false or not correct, no. We'll ask the questions and you need to try and answer. No help given by the shlichim unless they don't know and they can try and guess too. So we'll start with question number 1. In accordance with Israel's fundamental laws, the Knesset must be in Jerusalem. You have a few seconds to raise your thumbs. People, you don't need to help each other, each table. Let's see. We have here lots of truth. Anyone said Lo Nachon? False? Want to raise it up higher? Okay, everyone said Nachon. Let's see the answer. True, very good. Okay, next. In accordance with the forestry law, by the way, it's not that I don't want to get it, it was the quote I was given. The forestry law, you can only cut down a mature tree if another tree is planted in its place. True or false? It's a very nice idea, definitely. In Canada, I don't know how relevant it would be. You have too many trees anyway, you can donate a few. In Canada? Is that the law here?
Yes.
Very good. Now let's see if Israel agrees or not. The agriculture over here said yes. Let's see if they're in. True. Very good. That is the law. We do like to take care of our trees. Next question. If it is a Shemitah year when you uproot a mature tree, you get a time extension for planting the new tree. True or false? Now the observant ministry, what do you have to say? Ministry of Immigration. Okay, so what does the Ministry of Immigration have to say? True. Is the Ministry of Immigration very good? Applause please to the Ministry of Immigration. Which ministry does this symbol represent? So people say tourism, I thought it's the Meraglim, isn't it? The intelligence or something like that? So the answer is the Ministry of Tourism.
Since you've all shown such wonderful participation, we'd like to invite and encourage you to partake in our Shira B'Tzibur with singing the beautiful songs of our beautiful land, led by our you again for coming out. Have a wonderful